Hello guys and welcome back to our channel. Today I want to talk about how your breath hold time or distance in a pool correlate to your freediving depths. And the reason why I want to talk about this topic is because some people asking my breath hold time, let's say 3 minutes, how deep I can freedive, or my dynamic apnea with the bifins is 100 meters. Does it mean that I can freedive, let's say, to 50 meters? And the quick short answer, no, there is no direct correlation. However, pool freediving is still dramatically helpful tool, even if your main goal, even if your main focus in freediving is the depths, the pool freediving is still really important. Before we continue, my name is Sergey, I'm a freediving instructor trainer, and in this channel I'm helping you to become a better and safer freediver. Alright, so let's think about how static apnea correlate to the depths. I have a lot of students on my first level course who, let's say, can hold the breath in the pool for a couple of minutes. So they finish their pool session and then the breath hold time 2 minutes. However, as soon as they start their dive and maybe dive to 2, 3, 4, 5 meters on their first session, they start feeling urge to breathe. They come up on the surface and saying, oh, I'm feeling that I'm out of breath, I'm feeling that I want to breathe, so I have an urge to breathe. So how this happens? Let's come back to the static in a pool. When you hold your breath and doing nothing, so this is a definition of static apnea, the main regulation of your breathing, of your urge to breathe in this case, because we're not breathing, so the main reason for you to have an urge to breathe is elevated carbon dioxide. Of course, it's not that simple, it's not only carbon dioxide, but let's say the main thing is the carbon dioxide. However, when you start your depths freediving, when you freedive in the ocean, then it's not only carbon dioxide, it is also the movement. So when you're moving, there is a special receptors in your muscles which register that you are moving, and then they send the signal to your brain that start breathing more often because we are moving. So this is also going to contribute to urge to breathe. But even more important, as soon as you start your free dive, and even if you are 2, 3, like 5 meter deep, your lungs is going to compress pretty fast, right? So this is why if you're free diving to 10 meters, your lungs is going to be compressed twice. And when your lungs compressed, this is also signal from your lungs to your brain, look, the lungs is small. What usually happens when your lungs small? It means you finish your exhale and need to start inhale. So this is why when you're freediving on your first freediving session and your lungs becoming smaller, this is a signal for your brain, oh, I need to inhale, and this is what also contribute to your urge to breathe. This is why don't judge your first depth session compared to how you did with the pool. So even if in the pool you done a couple of minutes, you still more likely, especially at the beginning of the session, is going to have early urge to breathe for this and other factors as well. But let's say how your dynamic apnea and depths connected, because in dynamic apnea it's slightly more similar to what you have in depths. So you're kicking in dynamic apnea, you are not on the surface, you are maybe 2 or maybe even 3 meter deep, so you have some compression. However, you still have an urge to breathe early during your depth training because of few reasons. And reason number one, again, the main reason, because even if you're freediving, let's say to 5, 6, 7 meters, your lungs are going to be much more compressed compared to your dynamic apnea, and this is what is going to cause your desire to breathe much earlier. Also, guys, I don't want to touch this topic today, but there is a such thing as a partial pressure of any gases. So when you start freediving, like you still have a small amount of CO2 in your blood, but the partial pressure is going to rise much faster, and this is why more likely you're going to have urge to breathe faster as well. So guys, as you can see, there is many more factors during the depth freediving compared to the pool freediving which can cause you urge to breathe much earlier, especially if you're comparing static and depths. This is the two things which is really hard to compare because they're so much different. The static happens on the surface and there is no motion, and when you're freediving, it's not on the surface, your lungs compressing, and also there is a movement obviously in your legs, or if you're pulling the rope, it's movement in your arms. And guys, one more difference between pool freediving, doesn't matter static and dynamic, and depth freediving. what I noticed from years of teaching beginner freedivers, that most of the time my students get comfortable in a pool much faster compared to the ocean. And again, it makes sense, right? In a pool you are standing, so you know it's not deep, so it's kind of feeling that you have much more control of what is going on. And this is why my beginner students get comfortable during the static and dynamic much faster compared to the depths. And if, let's say, it is your first deep session on your first freediving course, or maybe just with a freediving instructor, then you're gonna be a little bit more nervous in the depths, like naturally be a little bit nervous. And because you're going to be a little bit more nervous, you're more likely going to be a little bit more tense. And if you're going to be a little bit more tense, you're going to consume more oxygen and produce extra carbon dioxide. And this is also going to trigger your urge to breathe early compared, let's say, to the pool freediving. Because in the pool, more likely you get comfortable much faster. And another thing, guys, don't forget, when we do a depth freediving, we need to equalize our ears. This is also can increase the level of stress. It also involves certain movement. So remember, the biggest difference between pool freediving and depth, not the biggest difference, but one of the biggest difference, is that during your depth freediving you need to equalize your ears. However, does it mean that pool freediving is useless for depth freediving? And the answer is absolutely not. The pool freediving is a great tool even if your main goal is a depth freediving. Why? First of all, if you do a pool freediving regularly, you becoming much more comfortable with the breath hold activity in general. So you're not afraid to hold your breath. And this is this is a big factor. If you do something and you're afraid of doing this, of course you're nervous, of course you're going to consume much more oxygen, of course you're going to produce much more CO2. So this is why if you train regularly in the pool and you are confident in your breath hold abilities, then the depth session is going to be much more comfortable. The second one, especially if you train dynamic apnea, that you're going to improve your technique significantly. So let's compare dynamic biofins with a constant biofins. The technique is more or less similar, the kicking technique. Of course, there is a differences how you do a turn, how you do the turn in the pool, and how you do the turn in the ocean. It's two different things. How you do a duck dive, it's a different compare between the pool session and depth session. However, there is a lot of similarities. This is why if you keep working on your dynamic technique, dynamic biofins technique, your constant weight technique is also going to be better. And if your technique is better, it means you're going to produce less CO2, it means your urge to breathe is going to be later. However, guys, as you remember, I was talking about your lung compression during your depth freediving session. And this is what you could not prepare during your pool sessions, because again, doesn't matter how long is your static, doesn't matter how good you're in dynamic, there is nothing what directly can prepare you for this unique compression which we experience while we are freediving, while we do a depth freediving. There is a few things which might be helpful a little bit, so like certain stretching can be helpful. You can find few stretching exercises I posted on this channel. Also, there is such exercise as a static apnea with exhale. It can be helpful as well to get you more comfortable for this sensation when your lungs is not full and you can experience that sensation for a while. So this is what you can do on top of your pool freediving training. So for example, your main goal is a depth freediving training next month. So during these months you keep doing your pool freediving training, obviously with a freediving buddy or maybe with a freediving instructor if you have one nearby. And also what I recommend you to do is to do exhale static regularly. It doesn't have to be a hard exhale static, but in my opinion it's better to have them more often compared to do them more intense. So I would say regular exhale statics training as well as regular stretching, specifically stretching for your diaphragm and your intercostal muscles. Again, it's not like, okay, if you're becoming extremely flexible in this area, your depth freediving is going to be like 10 times easier. No, it's not that connected. However, it's going to be easier for sure. Okay guys, this is it. This was a video about how pool freediving, static and dynamic, can relate to your depth freediving. Again, one more time, the main point is that yes, pool freediving significantly help you with the depths. However, don't think that there is a direct correlation what is your distance compared to what is your depth. It's slightly different. Hopefully this video was useful. If it was useful, don't forget to click the like button, and I will see you next time.